Have you ever felt like your entire world suddenly collapsed? As if the solid ground beneath your feet vanished, and everything you relied on, your stability, your beliefs, even your sense of identity, was suddenly shattered? Picture yourself at 17 years old, already a respected young warrior, belonging to a strong and influential clan. Then imagine an October morning in 1600 during the Battle of Sekigahara, where in a few bloody hours, your whole life is destroyed. Your army is crushed. Your clan is wiped out. Your social standing evaporates. And you must run like a fugitive, just to stay alive. This was the darkest chapter in the life of Miyamoto Musashi, the man who would later rise to become the most legendary samurai in Japan's history. But here's the unbelievable part. That brutal fall was not his end. It was his beginning. Because in the years that followed wandering through forests, living as a masterless Ronin Musashi crafted 5 mental principles that not only helped him survive, but formed a code so powerful that even 400 years later, it can lift anyone out of deep personal despair. And let me be clear, this isn't vague philosophy or cheap motivational talk. These are battlefield-forged rules born from the deepest suffering a person can endure. His first rule goes completely against everything you've been told about dealing with pain. His second rule is shockingly direct and brutally simple. And the 5th rule, honestly, most people reject it because it feels too counterintuitive. But it works. And I'm going to show you why. Before we continue, think about something. How many people do you know who are trapped in a life they don't want? How many of your friends pretend they're fine while their world is collapsing inside them? If you're still reading this, it's because some part of you recognizes this pain. And that recognition isn't weakness, it's courage. Because admitting that something needs to change is the very first step out of the darkness. So take a breath and follow me, because what you're about to understand in the next few minutes may be the difference between living stuck in the cycle of suffering or finally finding the strength to rebuild your life from zero. And believe me, if these principles pulled a 17-year-old boy out of the ruins of a medieval war, they can help you too. Let's return to October 1600. Musashi is standing on the plains of Sekigahara, right in the middle of the most decisive battle in Japan's history. On his side, 80,000 warriors. On the opposing side, another 80,000. In just 6 hours, the fate of the nation changed forever. Musashi's army was obliterated. Tens of thousands were slaughtered. Severed heads covered the ground like spoiled fruit. Somehow, Musashi managed to escape with his life. But escaping didn't mean triumph. It meant disgrace. Because under the samurai code, dying with honor on the battlefield is considered more noble than living in the shame of defeat. Now imagine yourself as a teenager. You've lost everything. You are being hunted like a criminal. Your identity, purpose, future gone in a single morning. What would you do? Most people would choose one of 2 paths: end their life to preserve honor, or spend decades drowning in regret, alcohol, and guilt. But Musashi took a different path, one that transformed not only his own destiny, but also reshaped the entire samurai mindset. Rule 1. Accept the harsh truth. He stopped fighting the reality of his situation. And look, while this sounds easy, it's anything but. Accepting reality when it's painful is one of the hardest human tasks because our minds are built to avoid suffering. When tragedy strikes, the natural response is denial. This can't be happening. Then anger. This is unfair. Then bargaining. Maybe if I do this, things will go back to how they were. Musashi bypassed all of it. He gazed at the ruins of his life and thought, all right, this is my situation now. What's the next move? Not, why me? Not, this shouldn't have happened. Just, what now? This shift in question is explosive. When you stop resisting what is already done, all the energy you were wasting is suddenly available for action. Think of it like this. Your house is on fire. You can scream, "This shouldn't be happening." Or you can find the exit. Which one saves your life? Acceptance isn't surrender. It is a strategy. A Harvard study proved this. Researchers followed people who faced intense trauma loss, divorce, death, and found something surprising. The people who recovered fastest weren't those who suffered least, but those who accepted the new reality the quickest. Why? Because acceptance allows you to ask the only question that matters. Given that this is already my reality, what do I do next? Musashi asked that question. It led him to Rule 2. But before we continue, let me ask you, what truth are you refusing to accept right now? What situation are you resisting that is only creating more pain? Because until you acknowledge where you are, you cannot move toward where you want to be. After embracing his new reality, Musashi confronted his second temptation, the desperate craving for immediate relief. Consider this. You're in pain, lost, directionless. Each day feels like torment. The agony feels unbearable. In that state, anything that numbs the pain becomes attractive alcohol, food, sex, distractions, gambling, anything that makes you forget for a moment. In feudal Japan, most ronin ended up drunk, broke, or morally corrupted. It was the standard fate of those who had lost everything. But Musashi rejected that path. Rule 2. Reject weakening pleasures. Instead of chasing comfort, he chose a harder road, unyielding discipline. He lived like a monk warrior, slept outdoors, ate only enough to survive, trained 8 hours a day, meditated, studied, wrote, every day. He fought against the lure of easy escape. Modern science validates this. When you're in emotional pain, chasing short-term pleasure doesn't heal you. It deepens the wound. A Stanford neuroscientist discovered that people who cope with trauma through indulgence or self-soothing actually end up with higher cortisol levels later. Why? Because the brain recognizes avoidance. It knows you're running, not healing. And this creates more anxiety. It's like using gasoline to put out a fire. It feels soothing for a moment, but the blaze gets worse. Discipline, however, creates the opposite effect. Those who chose disciplined habits recovered faster and emerged stronger. Musashi understood this instinctively. The pain you choose is different from the pain forced upon you. One destroys, the other rebuilds. Think of it this way. If suffering is inevitable, and it always is, then choose the form of suffering that strengthens you instead of the one that slowly destroys you. Discipline hurts at first, but each time you resist temptation, you grow. Every time you say no to weakness, you say yes to the person you wish to become. Like building muscle, painful but transformative. And ask yourself, what is your escape? What habit do you use to numb the pain, even though you know it harms you? Until you cut that out, you cannot move to Rule 3. Asterisk across the beach stands Sasaki Kojiro, feared as the demon of the long sword, one of the most skilled swordsmen to ever walk the earth. Impeccable technique, speed like lightning, and an obsession with defeating Musashi. The crowd watches closely. Gamblers can barely breathe. Everyone is aware that only one man will survive this day. And then comes a detail that shifted the fate of the entire duel. Musashi deliberately arrived 3 hours late. While Kojiro spent that time warming up, stressed, overthinking the fight, sharpening his mindset, Musashi was calmly carving a wooden sword. When he finally walked onto the beach, Kojiro exploded with fury. He cursed, shouted, threatened. His rage was overflowing. Musashi, on the other hand, breathed steadily, fully composed, mind sharp as glass. The duel lasted barely 30 seconds. Though Kojiro was technically superior, he lost. He died with his skull shattered by Musashi's wooden blade. Why? Because of one principle: your emotions are your enemy. Kojiro fought from anger. Musashi fought with clarity. And that is the thin line between life and death. This idea clashes with nearly everything modern culture tries to teach us. Today, people are told to follow their feelings, trust their hearts, and express every emotion. But Musashi discovered something that science now confirms. Your emotions are terrible advisors. A Harvard researcher tracked 2,000 people for a decade and discovered that 87% of their biggest regrets came from decisions made under intense emotional pressure: anger, fear, sadness, excitement. When strong emotions take over, your judgment collapses. That's why you send that angry WhatsApp message and regret it later. That's why you spend money you don't have when you're feeling low. That's why you make foolish choices when you're in love. Emotions were made for emergencies. They work like alarms, not navigation systems. If you're being attacked by a lion, fear helps you run. But if you're trying to rebuild your life, letting fear take charge only freezes you. Musashi understood all of this deeply. He developed what he called the imperturbable mind. It didn't mean he didn't feel emotions. It meant he never let emotions make decisions for him. Imagine this: you are the pilot of a plane. Your emotions are the passengers. They can cry, panic, scream, but you are the one flying. If you hand over control to the passengers, the plane crashes. Musashi used a simple technique known as the 10-second rule. Whenever a strong emotion hit him, he paused, breathed deeply, and counted to 10 before responding. He let the emotional wave rise and fall. Because emotions behave like waves, they build, peak, and fade. If you can let the wave pass instead of drowning in it, you stay in control. This applies to everything: anger, count to 10, fear, count to 10, sadness, count to 10, and then ask yourself, what would the most rational version of me do at this moment? Then you act from logic, not emotion. Does this feel cold? Robotic? Maybe, but it works. Think about it. How many problems have you created for yourself while acting impulsively? How many opportunities have you lost because of fear? How many relationships have you damaged with anger? If you want to rebuild your life, you must become the pilot, not the passenger. And here's the paradox. When you stop being controlled by emotions, you become free to feel them without losing yourself. You can experience sadness without breaking things. You can feel anger without destroying what you love. You can feel fear without being stuck. Your emotions turn into information, not orders. Now let me ask you, which emotion controls you the most? Anger? Fear? Anxiety? Sadness? Because until you master it, you'll always be fighting against yourself. But there's something even more dangerous, something that nearly destroyed Musashi from the inside. After years of wandering as a ronin, he faced an opponent more subtle than any warrior: himself. Loneliness weighed heavily on him. Days were repetitive, and slowly he became trapped in a dangerous cycle. He replayed the battle of Sekigahara in his head constantly. Every moment, every choice, every mistake. He spent hours imagining alternate outcomes. What if I had done that? Why did this happen to me? What if I chose differently? This endless rumination was eating him alive. It was like reopening a wound every single day. Here is the trap. When your life collapses, it feels natural to turn all your focus inward, to your trauma, your pain, your story. You become obsessed with yourself. You replay the same toxic thoughts. You circle inside your own suffering. But Musashi realized something vital. Rule 4. Stop putting yourself at the center of everything. Self-obsession is a cage. So he made a radical choice. He expanded his mind beyond his own pain. He started studying philosophy, poetry, art, and architecture. hepractized calligraphy, painting, and sculpture. He traveled across Japan, learned from different cultures, and spoke with masters across disciplines. He forced his mind to care about things bigger than his suffering. And something remarkable happened. The more he learned about the world, the smaller his pain felt, not because the pain vanished, but because he gained perspective. It's like climbing a mountain. At the bottom, a rock seems huge. From the top, it's nothing more than a tiny speck in a vast landscape. Neuroscience perfectly explains this. A University of Michigan study found that people who focus only on their problems activate the same brain circuits linked to chronic depression. But when the same people learn completely unrelated subjects, the brain builds new neural connections that shut off those suffering circuits. You give your mind new places to go instead of looping in pain. Musashi understood this naturally. A small mind sees only small problems. A broadened mind sees possibilities that were invisible before. He practiced a powerful exercise. Every day, he dedicated at least 1 hour to learning something completely unrelated to whatever he was feeling. If he was sad, he studied mathematics. If he was angry, he practiced calligraphy. If he was anxious, he observed nature. The purpose was to break the cycle of self-pity and connect with something larger. Here's the harsh truth. Your suffering is real, but it is a microscopic dot compared to the entire human experience. 8 billion people, countless stories, millions of years of evolution, limitless neural possibilities. And yet, many people waste this entire universe by staying trapped in a small narrative about their pain. I'm not saying your pain is irrelevant. I'm saying it's not the only thing that matters. When your perspective broadens, 2 major things happen. First, you realize your problems aren't unique. Many people have faced similar struggles and survived. That gives hope. Second, you discover mental strengths you never knew existed because your mind was too occupied suffering to explore them. It's like living in a huge mansion, but spending your whole life locked in the basement. You have no idea what lies above. Musashi turned this mental expansion into a weapon. While other warriors only focused on swordsmanship, he studied everything. This made him creative, unpredictable, and capable of seeing solutions others couldn't. The same can happen to you. When you stop obsessing over your problems and start feeding your mind new knowledge, your ability to solve those problems multiplies. So tell me, when did you last learn something completely new, something unrelated to your stresses? Because a stuck mind creates stuck solutions, but there is one final trap that can destroy everything you've built. Musashi, now known as Japan's greatest swordsman, undefeated in over 60 duels, author of the Book of 5 Rings, respected by warriors, athletes, and strategists, wrote a surprising confession in a letter to a disciple. The most dangerous enemy I ever faced carried no sword. He was invisible, silent, and nearly destroyed me. What enemy was that? Envy. Even after all his discipline, emotional mastery, and widened perspective, Musashi realized there was still one silent enemy left, comparing his suffering to the visible happiness of others. During his years wandering as a ronin, he saw samurai who hadn't lost everything in the war, men who still had clans, ranks, honor, stability. And deep inside, it began to corrode him. Why do they still have so much? Why am I the one left with nothing? Why did fate choose me for loss? It's unfair. This constant comparison acted like a slow, burning poison. It sabotaged every bit of progress he made. Because no matter how much you grow, someone will always appear to be ahead of you. And that's when he uncovered the final rule. 5th rule. Gratitude is a weapon. Not the fake positivity everyone talks about, but strategic gratitude. Musashi started training his mind to focus on what still remained instead of what had been taken away. He still had life. He still had strength. He still had the freedom to walk his own path. He still carried wisdom. He still had experience. And above all, he had the chance to rebuild himself from scratch. Science later confirmed the power of this shift. A neuroscientist from the University of California studied 300 people who had faced deep trauma. They were split into two groups. Group 1 spent 15 minutes daily thinking about everything they had lost. Group 2 spent 15 minutes focusing on what they still possessed. After 30 days, their brains looked dramatically different. Group 1 showed heightened activity in the amygdala, the fear and emotional distress center, and reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, the reason engine. Group 2 showed the reverse: less fear, better judgment, and astonishingly, higher levels of dopamine and serotonin, the chemicals associated with happiness and motivation. Meaning, gratitude isn't just about feeling good. It literally rewires your brain into a more effective machine. But there's one important detail. Gratitude cannot be vague. It must be specific. Musashi created a daily ritual. Every night, he wrote down 3 precise things he was grateful for that day. Not, "I'm grateful for life," but "I'm grateful I learned a new technique today." Not, "I'm grateful for my health," but "I'm grateful my body handled 6 hours of training without failing." Specific. Gratitude forces your mind to actually see what's working, instead of automatically obsessing over what's broken. And it has an interesting side effect. When you get better at noticing what works, you get better at creating more things that work. Like a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Here's the most surprising part. Musashi didn't use gratitude just for emotional healing. He used it as a combat strategy. Warriors who focused on what they might lose fought with fear. Those who focused on what they could win fought with determination. But Musashi focused on what he had already earned. This made him steady, confident, unshaken. He entered each duel grateful to be alive, grateful for the chance to test himself, grateful for the path he had walked. This wasn't naivety, it was psychological warfare. Gratitude creates mental abundance. Mental abundance creates clearer decisions. When you believe you have inner resources, you act like a person who has resources. And when you act like that, you generate more resources. A positive cycle. Now, imagine the opposite. Envy creates mental scarcity. Scarcity breeds desperate choices. Desperate choices bring more scarcity. That becomes a destructive cycle. So ask yourself honestly, do you spend more time thinking about what you have or what you lack? Because that answer decides whether you are building your life or quietly destroying it. And here's the irony. The people who practice gratitude the most are the ones who end up achieving the most. Not because of magic or the universe helping them, but because a grateful brain simply performs better. It makes sharper choices. It notices opportunities others ignore. It attracts people instead of repelling them. Gratitude isn't weakness. It is a competitive advantage. Musashi's final hidden rule was this: he never tried to return to who he used to be. While most people spend their crisis trying to get back the life they had, Musashi understood that his old life was gone, and trying to resurrect what was dead was pointless. Instead, he asked himself, with everything I've learned, who can I become now? He didn't try to revive the innocent 17-year-old samurai he once was. He decided to evolve into something entirely new, a warrior philosopher, a man who blended physical mastery with spiritual depth. He used his pain as the raw material to build a completely new identity. And here's the twist. If the Battle of Sekigahara had never happened, Musashi might have lived and died as just another samurai, skilled, yes, but forgettable. It was the destruction of his old life that created the conditions for him to become legendary. The crisis wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of his myth, and this applies to you too. Maybe you're grieving the person you used to be. Maybe you're desperate to regain the normal life you lost. But what if that normal life was a beautiful cage? What if you are living far below your potential? What if your current crisis is the exact force pushing you toward a version of yourself you never imagined? Think about how many people you know who have everything, stability, comfort, routines, yet are deeply unhappy. Maybe the collapse of your life isn't death. Maybe it's awakening. Because here's a truth people don't like hearing. Real growth only happens under pressure. Diamonds form under extreme force. Muscles grow only when pushed past their limits. Character is built in adversity. When life is easy, you get comfortable. When life is hard, you unlock strengths you never knew existed. Musashi understood this. He turned the worst moment of his life into the fuel that created his best self. And his 5 principles: accept reality, reject shortcuts, master your emotions, expand your mind, cultivate gratitude, are the blueprint he left behind for anyone wanting to transform God. It's not easy. It's not quick. It's not pleasant, but it works. Here is my final challenge for you. Stop trying to repair the life that broke. Start constructing the life that can rise from it. Use Musashi's rules not to return to your old self, but to forge the person you still have the potential to become. Because in the end, you have 2 choices. You can spend your life mourning who you were, or you can commit your life to building who you can be. The choice is yours. But if you choose the second path, know this: you are not walking alone. Musashi carved a trail. Modern science has validated it. Thousands have walked it successfully. Your broken life isn't a curse. It's an invitation disguised as disaster. The question is, do you have the courage to accept it? Because on the other side of that courage is a version of you that hasn't been born yet, but is waiting to emerge. And that version will surprise you. Now tell me, among Musashi's 5 rules, which one impacted you the most? And more importantly, which one will you start practicing today? Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. And you didn't come here to be entertained, you came here to transform. So tell me, what's your next move?